KLIF News Time is now 6:18. The man who has been in psychiatric care for decades after being accused of trying to kill President Reagan is set to be released next week so he can go live with his 90-year-old mother. Quentin Brogdon is with Crain Brogdon in Dallas, and he joins us now live to talk about this. Good morning, Quentin.
Good morning. Good morning, Amy and Dave.
A lot of people are scratching their heads over this one. Was this expected?
Well, many people may not know Judge Paul Friedman, who's been overseeing Hinckley since about 2001. He's been allowing him on a pretty steady basis to have more and more freedoms. He's already been out 17 days at a time, and many people may not realize that. So arguably, this is just an extension of that. He's going to have a bunch of conditions on him. One of the conditions he will not have on him, interestingly enough, is ankle monitoring. The government wanted that, and Judge Friedman rejected it. The hospital officials were pretty much adamantly opposed. They said it would stigmatize him and that he was a low risk for flight.
Are there different administrative types of punishments for people like this? I mean, is he considered a psychiatric patient as opposed to a convicted attempted assassin?
He basically is. He was found after an 8-week trial that in 1982 to be not guilty by reason of insanity. So he's been under treatment. He tried to commit suicide a couple times early in his detention. He's been at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. But since then, he's been getting therapy, medications, and part of his condition, one of the conditions is he has to continue weekly therapy and monthly outpatient therapy. He's got to volunteer work 3 times a week. He can't be in contact with the victims. He can't get in contact with the President of the United States, who, needless to say, or Jodie Foster. Some people may remember part of his motivation to do the original attempt to kill Ronald Reagan was his infatuation with Jodie Foster.
Right. He's going to be living with his 90-year-old mother. She's 90 years old, and I don't know how much longer she's going to be alive. What happens when she passes?
Well, the judge considered some evidence about that. She has about $500,000 in available assets, and there was a discussion in some of the hearings about how long that could sustain him. And, there's a number of years. He's going to have to be integrated at some level back. He's actually applied to try to go back to work at some fast food places, but was not accepted. And one of the neighbors, interestingly enough, has been pretty vocal, in one of the mother's neighbors, in not wanting him in the neighborhood. But be that as it may, the judge is allowing it. And the judge could phase out the restrictions completely in a year to a year and a half if he chooses. It just depends on how compliant Hinckley is going forward.
Where is he going? Where does his mother live?
Williamsburg, Virginia.
Right.
And one of his conditions is he has to stay within a 50-mile radius of that. But he can drive. He had to turn over his mobile phone information, his vehicle's information. He can't tamper with the browser history on his computer. He can't use social media unless his treatment team unanimously approves. He has conditions like that. No alcohol or weapons. He has to volunteer work 3 times a week. I think I said that.
Yeah. So has he given any interviews or spoken at all yet, or when do we expect something like that to come down?
One of the conditions is no media interviews. He did write a letter in '84, about 3 years after the assassination attempt, that began, "Dear Mr. President," something to the effect of, 3 years ago, I tried to kill you and 3 others. And he essentially apologized for it. And interestingly enough, I guess not surprising, Ronald Reagan publicly said that, he forgave him and hoped he got treatment and got better. So that's about it publicly that has come out since the assassination attempt.
As you can imagine, Ronald Reagan's daughter, Patty Davis, is not happy with this.
No, about a year ago on Facebook, she posted something that said, essentially, this just doesn't feel right. And I think she probably spoke for many. A jury, in 1982 heard 8 weeks of testimony, and they were experts, Harvard and Yale, on both sides of the issue. And at the end of that, the jury decided he was not guilty by reason of insanity. And none of us heard all the evidence that they heard. And if you believe in the jury system, the jury spoke. But it did cause quite a bit of controversy. I think 38 states and the federal government ended up rewriting their laws on the insanity defense, making it much harder to be used now. And there's statistics, it's used probably in less than 1% of the cases now, and it's hard to get a jury to go with it.
We're talking with attorney Quentin Brogdon of the law firm of Crain Brogdon in Dallas, and we're talking about John Hinckley, who's being released from psychiatric hold or arrest. In parole hearings, typical parole hearings, the victims' families and other interested people are able to stand up and testify before a parole board as to why a person should not be released or why he should be able to be released. Was there any of that kind of procedure involved in this? And who did testify to the fact that John Hinckley is reasonably in control of his own life now?
Well, the judge issued an order that was over 100 pages long, and there have been multiple days of hearings over the years in which numerous experts, including his treaters, and then experts also retained by the government early on opposed his release for any period of time. But then as the years progressed, the fight or the debate became more and more about the conditions he would have to live under. And the government has consistently wanted more and tougher conditions. And the government has pointed out in some of the filings that he hasn't always been completely compliant with what he had promised to do when he was given these leaves. In 2011, for example, he said he was going to a movie, but he then went to a fast food restaurant, and then he went to a bookstore where he visited a section of the bookstore that had books on the Reagan assassination attempt, which is a little bit concerning. In 2015, he was supposedly going to another friend's house, but he went to a friend's music recording studio. So these are some of the things the government has pointed out over the years. And the judge heard all of that, heard from the experts, and is doing this basically on a trial basis. He's been out anyway, 17 days at a time, in the last,
right.
I don't know exactly how long that's been going on, but in recent time, that he's already out quite a bit. Folks may not realize that.
Well, thank you so much for your expertise this morning. We do appreciate you helping us clarify this. Quentin Brogdon, attorney with Crain, Lewis, and Brogdon here in Dallas.
It is 7